But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne, and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know, I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in-store, and exclusive access to sold-out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
The Vietnam War, it's over. Your job has just begun.
A new HBO original limited series.
Welcome to the world of spycraft. Strap in.
From executive producers Park Chan-wook and Robert Downey Jr.
What are you concealing?
Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Viet Thanh Nguyen.
What if I told you that I was a communist spy?
How did you become this?
The Sympathizer, streaming April 14th on Max. Subscription required.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Giles Bidder. This is 101 Part-Time Jobs, the podcast where I speak to bands and artists about making it work and the journey of getting to that place, including, of course, the side hustles that they worked along their way. On today's episode, we got Emily Haines of the unflinching Metric. Together 25 years. Their new album, Formentera 2, came out recently. And in this chat, Emily talks about the fuel that feeling like dead wood can bring, not subscribing to any one particular scene of bands, and of course, some of her old part-time jobs. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and rate or review the show if you're able to. I've got some really great guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I'm excited to share them as they come. but 2000 Trees Festival in Cheltenham supports the show. They've just announced a mega lineup with the Gaslight Anthem headlining, as well as loads of incredible bands like Manchester Orchestra, Boston Manor, the Mysterines, Lambrini Girls, Dune Rats from Australia, Gouge Away, great band from Florida. Yeah, 2000 Trees is looking mega. If you want to get your tickets, right now they're 30% off with full refunds until the end of the year. There's installment tickets if that makes more sense for you, and there's a limited amount of 4-day tickets and VIP tickets that will be made available tomorrow. That's Friday the 3rd of November from 10 a.m. You can get those tickets from 2000trees.co.uk/tickets. 2000 Trees is back, baby. It's ace. I love going there. It's a great independent, medium-sized festival. It's easy to get around and traverse the day seeing all the bands that you want to. I'm a huge fan of 2000 Trees and thrilled that they support this podcast. Before we get into this chat, I'm here with Rebecca from Eka, multi-instrumentalist, plays piano, plays saxophone, also a brand ambassador for Ampolo, which is a great brand new free app for musicians. All right, Rebecca, could you tell us a little bit about Ampolo?
Yeah, I've been using Ampolo, which is an app that came out earlier this year, actually. Smart with its AI demixing tools. So in under a minute, it will completely demix a track, which means I can take out the drums, the bass, vocals, whatever it is I want to be trying my own part over. Whereas before, I would be Googling chords and then on YouTube Googling the song and kind of flicking between the tabs while setting up my instrument and trying to practice along. It all happens in the app. And then I'm posting it to a feed if I want that social aspect of it, but I don't have to. I've been spending many hours just practicing parts and thinking, wow, this is so easy, play again and again to make sure I nail that bit.
So it's a practice tool. You can film yourself. It's free. It's out there. Ampolo. You can download it today. All right, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. Here's Emily Haines of Metric. 101 Part-Time Jobs.
Certainly, and I was very excited when I saw the theme and discussion we were going to have today because I have some pretty funny stories. But we did hit a point, and it's, I think, a good thing to remember, even though I got tons of flaws, but one of them is not being appreciative of what I have. So I always, it's not like I need to remember how shit it was and how, fortunate I am. Cause I do know that, but it has been, I haven't had to work outside of Metric. Even stuff that I've done like with other people, it hasn't been cause I had to since like 2003. So that's
nice.
Cool. But the 5 years leading up to that are full of shenanigans and challenges. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you remember those challenges, do you? You'll find yourself kind of remembering a particular scenario now, like even now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's funny because I think that one of the early turning points was like a lot of people I'm sure you talk to, waiting tables, although perhaps in the UK it's less of a good call because I know tipping's not a thing.
Shit.
Yeah. So, but here, it's really flexible hours. You can get in, you can get out. You're kind of social. You can get fed. It's appealing. Yeah. And so I waited tables early on. This was after my first job, which was, midnight shift at a cosmetics counter, but that was more just like when I'm in school. Right. So waiting tables and then hitting a point where I was like, this is before I moved to New York. I was like, this is a slippery slope, man. Like, I wasn't a drinker or anything. I was like, what? But I could see the people around me who were all creative, but they're kind of falling for this sort of mediocre substitute, which is like, you're social, you're fun, you got some money, you're doing some things here and there. And I was like, this is not intense enough. And this is not hardcore enough. And I'm fucking hardcore. And I need to win this challenge, which is like an uphill climb. So I remember quitting the waitressing job and being like, I'll just be really poor. I'm willing. I was like, pull out the net. I'll just be really poor, and like getting my money together. And I don't remember what had led me there, but I went to a place that I think it was like, I thought maybe I could, I knew they did these small shows, and I thought maybe I could like sell merch for someone or something. I was just doing a like cold call walk pre-social media kind of thing. And I walked into this place, and the two people that were doing something there were Meryl Nisker and Leslie Feist. So Peaches and Feist.
Nice.
And I'm like, hey, these two people seem eminently cool. And they were doing, I think it was around the time that Meryl was doing like, you come to see a rock show, a motherfucking cock show. Like it was that. And I was like, okay, she's cool. And Leslie and I would just like ride our bikes around and be broke. So that was like.
Do you remember introducing yourself?
Oh, for sure. I was just, but they were like, whatever, they were nice, but we're all just like, whatever. No one had done anything yet,
Right.
And then when I moved to New York, waiting tables was a complete blessing at a place called Cafe Orlin on St. Mark's Place. Mostly because, you could just get a meal. But I would make $80 a shift usually. But the biggest,
that's pretty good.
It was the biggest challenge there was at that time, taxis wouldn't take you to Williamsburg, which is really hard to imagine because now it's like the most Williamsburg is like so corporate looking, but you'd have to do this thing where you'd get in the cab, get them to start the meter, because I'm finishing my shift at 2 a.m. or whatever, start the meter and like say like, I'm going to like 23rd and 6th, like, and then they'd start the meter and be like, actually I'm going to Williamsburg. They'd be like, you're hustling. But that job saved me. I quit when I got discovered and got flown to the UK in 2000. Jimmy and I got our big break. I quit and then I had to come back. And they were like, I was so glad I didn't burn the bridge. I wasn't assholic about it when I left, but
that's smart. That's smart. I mean, it's what you said earlier about having this kind of thing that most people do, and it's like, okay, well, I can hang out with my friends and I can drink and I can eat, but it's not the full picture. It's not 100% playing music, collaborating. I mean, it's brave. It's so brave. Is that part of your kind of makeup? Do you think that's like part of your nature to do shit, to do your life like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think when I look back at my 20s, I feel like I was so like angular and like I just feel like I would have been so intense. But now I'm like, fucking A. Like everyone's just hanging around. And I was just, it was so nasty in Williamsburg. Like the air quality, which sadly is still true. There's a place called Radiac that's like a radiation dump. It's like the worst air quality in the world in Williamsburg. It's just like, jogging like around a crappy needle park and just buying, thrift everything. But I was like,
that's not
the mediocre life is there for me. I would rather do this. And it worked. Yeah. It was worth it. And as soon as we could, we all we got out of our jobs and we'd do anything, including, driving across the country was cheaper. Like you could sublet the place and just get in the van and drive, and it was cheaper. And it made me feel, and that is what we did to make the transition to LA. It was like, it was just cheaper. So you'd like rather play one show in Chicago for like 15 people and drive across the entire country than work a job that has you in the hamster wheel of the cost of living is so high. And so, we paid the price, but it was worth it.
In a way, you can't lose if you do that, because if the stable thing is you don't really want to do it anyway, then fuck it, you can't lose. You can kind of put yourself in a position where you can't lose. And when things do fuck up, when the van does break down, or you really run out of cash, then you try and laugh about it, try and get through it.
I think particularly when you're young, it's like if you can have. It's hard to say, like have the courage to do it, because we didn't even have, and this isn't to denigrate, this, whatever. Some people grow up in a wealthy family and that's cool, but that wasn't our story. Like, we all had a good childhood, but there was no like, my dad would sometimes like lend us money on the credit card. But I found actually a bunch of papers from that time, and it's just so funny. Like the tally, everything's like $75. It's like, I'm looking, I'm like, I remember my dad used to like he'd float us, but we always had to pay him back. And I thought it would be like in the thousands. And then I'm looking and it was like, oh my God, this is like pennies. But we didn't even have the pennies. It was like 75 bucks, like 175, you know, and playing a gig and you all get 20 bucks at the end of it. But if you're young, even without like the net of a family that could perhaps bail you out, if you can ever take that window to just see what happens, I think it's a really, that was the right time to do it. It's like in my 20s.
It's funny how many times, you know, you hear stories of friends, and it's happened a few times to me and my girlfriend. We were going to a wedding, for example, this summer, and we were like, we don't want to pay for the taxi. It's too expensive. And we were like, this is very conservative countryside Britain that we're in, right? And we were like, Eva was like, I'll stick out my thumb, and if someone picks us up, we'll get a ride. And within 10 minutes, we got a ride. And there's something about that. I think like as a band or as a musician, you've got something to give. And music's so in our tradition. It's so obviously like a backdrop to so much of our culture and lots of places in the world, but that you could go to somewhere and probably find a couch to crash on.
And again, it's gotta have a time frame on it. You don't want to become that person. You know, but like the inventiveness, and Eva sounds really cool. Like exactly that attitude of like, why not? You know, it's not like you're irresponsible. It's not like you couldn't pay the taxi. It's not like you're, you know, expecting a handout. It's just like, let's just see what happens. Put your thumb out.
Let's try it.
Let's try it.
And be polite, be thankful, be grateful.
For sure.
Do you think bands, would you have an opinion? I mean, maybe it's fine if you don't have an opinion on like how bands can or do operate today? I mean, do you think it's harder, easier with the internet?
Yeah, it's really hard to quantify. Hey, like I don't, like so many things in your personal life too, where if only you could just see the path not taken, just, you know, in the multiverse or whatever, can I just see what the other road was? Like, what's the version where there's no internet? I mean, how do we even conceive of that? It's just where we are, right?
You can't, yeah.
So I think the one thing that's, I could see being harder is like the expectation from labels, which, you know, it's no secret how I feel that it's usually a really raw deal for musicians. Just the way it's built is flawed, in my opinion. But that the expectation is on you before anyone will even look at you, that you have to like have already built this like marketing empire of yourself, with your followers. Is kind of like unfair, because ostensibly that's what they're supposed to do for you. But so it's like someone's going to come in and do the usual song and dance where they're like, I'm going to make you a star. But then they're like, but first, you know, it's like, well, you know, and then they're generally, I think, insecure. So especially if you're a young artist, there's just going to be a bunch of geese trying to like get you to teach them how to, you know, put something on TikTok. And then so what's in it for you?
I read you talking about toxic positivity, and that it makes me think about that in this scenario, because, you know, the music industry is about like putting on a smile, you know, like not, and kind of being like, yeah, everything's fucking great. And occasionally you'll read a feature when someone gives an interview where it's like, nah, fuck this is bad. And more often than not, like it's painted in a kind of bullshit way. And it's interesting that, you know, we go to music for like self-expression, you know, unfiltered self-expression, and yet somehow there's still this kind of you know, this dislike or this allergicness to being fucking real.
Amen. I mean, it's so funny because like I hope it sounds like in your estimation of the way you perceive me and Metric is that we're being real, you know. But even by our standards, like when we toured with Noel, it was really, Jimmy went on this whole thing where he's like, I just really envy how these guys, it's something I think in like your culture that's so we love and envy is like, he'll just be like, yeah, it sucked. It was terrible. Like he'll just say when things are shit, and with the foul language as well. And I feel like we do pretty well considering the cultural expectation that you're describing, you know, that we're kind of laboring under. But, you know, even then Jimmy has said like, I just long to be like, just say like, no, this fucking sucks. And, you know, I've gotten better just internally, like outside of even speaking to the press or whatever. Like I did have, you know, I used to be just, I think, so painfully silver lining on everything. Definitely came from a right place, and which is why that book, I would highly recommend it to anyone, is because I was just trying to make things work. Like I think music is foundationally like problem solving. Just even making the song exist, it's all problem solving. So we have like a major setback, like, your album leaked. And before anyone could actually, when that was a thing that was problematic, it's like on Pagans in Vegas, right? So it's like shit was brutal and really with real consequences. And before anyone could even process the genuine and correct emotion of like, this is brutal, I'm upset, already I would like come up with some way that like this was working for us. So Jimmy was like, I can't be spun, stop spinning like you need to like learn how to actually handle. So I really took that, and then I found that book really helpful, because we do it instinctively. Like someone loses their job and you're like, you're gonna have so much free time. It's like it's dismissive and it's not helping.
But I can see how it would kind of come naturally, because whether you think of it as a performance or you're up there on stage playing your music, or whatever on the range of scale of performer or not, is that there's always going to be like an element of wanting to carry that with you. Even before Instagram and TikTok, I imagine, you tell me, but this element of being like, this is who I am, like this is kind of my identity as an artist, and I want to ultimately, sounds weird to say, but be a good time person, be someone who's good to be around. For
sure. And in my case, like lyrically, I feel as though that really is my whole, lyrically, and like in with real consequences, and the choices I've made in my life has been like, I will not let this defeat me. It's like, this is my whole fucking purpose. And the idea is that it shouldn't be the sort of big step I had to get to, is like, but not by glossing it over. So, full acknowledgement, like not even acceptance, but acknowledgement of like, that is bad, and still being like, and I will prevail. That's the key difference.
Sadness kind of carries hope with it. Yeah. Quite often.
For sure. And it's like,
it's weird.
And in fact, I was so pleased. I felt like I was able to articulate it in Doom Scroller, the take something for the pain, not something to conceal it, more like a magnifying mirror, full size, inner echo, reflecting solace revived. Like, you're not going to make it better by, you're not soothing it by suppressing it. The actual therapeutic comes from revealing it. Fucking A.
Letting it go, totally, and sharing it. I think there's a lot to. I read a journalist in the US talk about how he wants to be specific and open-hearted, and that kind of rang bells in me. I was like, whoa, like being open-hearted doesn't mean about always being in a good mood. It's like sharing stuff and being communicative, and ultimately that's what music does. That's what music is. It's communication.
Oh my God, indeed. And I have said forever, and I'll say it again, when you boil down the problems of this world, communication is so much a foundational piece of it, which is not to oversimplify in any way. But when you look at so many things from the mundane to the profound, it's just like, oh shit, I thought you meant that. Or like, I was trying to say this. Or like, it's like, oh my God, you didn't warn me about that. Like, it's so simple, and yet. 101 part-time jobs,
101 part-time jobs. During that time when you were kind of crossing over to being like a full-time band, and what was your kind of I kind of glean that your mindset was like, this is what I want to do more than anything. Like anything apart from playing, making, touring music is kind of in the periphery, and I don't want to care about it. But was there still like a part of you that was like a bit of a heart jump, a bit of a terrifying prospect of pushing yourself? I mean, I guess this is before coming to London, because I imagine that London trip, I know that it wasn't exactly perfect the way it rolled out, but was after that, was that, there's a few questions in there, but I mean, before going to London, was there a period where you were like, this is still fucking scary, what I'm trying to do? I'm still like,
oh my
shitting
God.
myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still scary, to be frank. I mean, but it only became like real. Yeah, probably like in 2003, 2004. But even then, just because, there's then this like sort of terrifying interim where you now feel like you can never go back to doing anything else for many reasons. You don't want to, you're not equipped, and no one would have you. And also it's completely unknown whether you'll be able to survive on what you're doing on its own.
You don't know what the future looks like.
Yeah. And even now, for 20 years of Metric, I'm trying to plan for another 20 of how to keep everybody, we've done really well. Everyone owns their homes, people are raising families and doing all this stuff, but it's still just like, it's a huge amount of pressure. And I don't think I've ever stopped being hungry, and perhaps that's wise.
I never thought of Metric as like attached to a particular scene, like so many bands are, of their choosing or not. But then reading about how you were really figures, friends, socially, in that you came back from London, and then that kind of New York meet me in the bathroom era, Alphabet City time. That was the time that you came into, and you were buzzed about it. You were galvanized by it. What are your kind of main memories of that time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think to your point, we've, because we're not associated, or perhaps the reason we're not associated with just one scene is we've kind of made friends all over the place. So like, when we, as we said, we came back to New York, and it's documented now of just like, those bands are living in our loft. Yeahs, Liars, TV on the radio, Stars, LCDs around the corner. Sam from Interpol is like got our demos and given them to Jules, who became our drummer. Like it all kind of was happening. But we had a similar thing with our fam in Canada with the Broken Social Scene clan. And then even in the UK, touring with Test Icicles and like hanging out with Dev and James and like being part of that. So we've just made friends and sort of found a connection, Death from Above, 1979, that found connections with friendships that defy the genres in a way. But I would say that like the funniest and most sort of historic tale from coming back to from England, kind of with our tails between our legs. I remember everyone waving goodbye when we went to England, and they're like, "You're going to make it." And then we came back, and it's like this other whole thing is popping off, and we're having to get our old jobs back, and all of those things that happened. Was we played a show in a tiny club called Fez Cafe that's gone now, Lafayette and Great Jones, where Jimmy and I were trying to be a two-piece with him on drums and me like on synths. And it was like a really bad show. And the only people that were there, as I recall, I'm sure there were others, but we're sitting in one booth were this woman, Eurogene, who we knew through Nick Sinner, who also lived in our loft. And this girl, Molly, who worked at Beacon's Closet, which is where Sam from Interpol worked. His wife owned that vintage store. And they had a CD section, which is where our demo was. And this guy, Jules Scott Key, who had gotten our CDR demo from his friend Molly, who worked at the vintage store where Sam from Interpol is the drummer. So he's sitting at the show, and we don't realize that, we do the show. Jimmy and I are devastated. We're like, we fucking suck. All this amazing stuff is happening around us. Like what's going to happen, and how are we going to survive? And we go to our local, which is this place, Sweaty Betty's, or not Sweaty Betty's. What's it called? Sweaty Betty's is a place in Toronto. I'm blanking on the name, but the place in Williamsburg, it's like bar that's, I believe, gone, unfortunately. And Nick and Karen from Yeahs are doing their solo thing, which is called Unitard, which I still have like a CDR of that, because Jimmy was always burning CDs for these guys. Like they'd have something on cassette, and we had the facilities because we were like circulating our music that way. So Nick would be like, "Hey, can you put this on CDR?" And but they're playing a acoustic show, the two of them, Unitard, and we're like, we just go to have drinks. And Jules is there, and he's like, "Hey, I was at your show. It was great." And Jimmy's like, "You're an idiot. It wasn't great." And like, we don't have a fucking band. And like, if you think it's so great, you should join the band. He was like, "Great. I'd love to." And we're like, "Great. I'm sure this guy sucks as well." And then only later did we discover like through the kind of rumor mill of the neighborhood that people are like, do you have any idea who that guy is? He's like the fucking best drummer in New York. No one can ever find him. He doesn't have a phone, but he wants to play with you. And so that's how we got Jules.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And then Josh came later.
That's
so
awesome.
I feel like that's a little known tale that just fills me with happiness. And I was going through the archives and I found that like unitard CDR. It says like unitard for J and E, you know, and it's just such a nice memory. Yeah.
Are you good at keeping hold of that stuff?
Some of it. It surprises me. Like now we have this studio, we bought this church, and we have everything in this like rural outlet, but we now have everything in one place. So I'm kind of surprised to see the things that have held on, like that in particular. I'm like, God, I'm glad I have that. And like I think the original like master, the AIS CDR, that got them signed to Touch and Go. I remember Jimmy like made those CDRs for them or something. Like I think I have one of those original ones. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool.
I think there's something to say, you know, for, you know, falling on your face 5 times before like getting it right.
Fuck.
You know, because I know the National had so many years, you know, being like, oh, we're just like the less interesting Interpol. That's the way that people see us.
Right. Totally. And almost harder for them because because they were really kind of strictly there and sonically comparable, and to carve it out, like at least for us, we've always been so weird and kind of genre defying, you know, in the fact that like being pop was weird, you know, when everyone's doing garage rock, and then we're like, it is that, but also I'm going to play like a new wave Sequential Circuits Pro 1 at a time when people are like, that's not what you do. And I was like, it is though. And I'm going to like headbang with this thing. So it kind of saved us because we were always just kind of like, what the hell is that? But for the National, that's an interesting insight.
That's ace, you know, because music trends are always going to ebb and flow. I mean, 20 years of Metric, you must have had those times where, because everyone does. Everyone can feel like a bit of dead wood, and you feel like you're like the weight on the shoulders is a lot. I mean, has that happened to you, and how do you get through it? What has kind of been a proven method to get through that?
I mean, I think it's to always feel like deadwood, frankly. I mean, when you look at the scope of what's possible and what's achievable and what conceivably you could do and what you're not, you could always just feel lesser than forever. But so it's kind of being like taking ownership of like, have an original life, have a cool life. Of course, you're not going to be the thing of the moment. And then if you are, then that's going to pass. And it's, you know, we sort of flow through so many genres and scenes and moments that I just feel like we're fortunate. And the reason that we are is we're like, we know we're not the biggest band. A lot of stuff is not that great and it's huge and it's kind of boring and it's kind of like Taco Bell and like, it's fine. So to always have the awareness that there are so many amazing, cool things happening, and if you're lucky, you're just one of them, you know, it's more fun.
There's so many, I mean, one of the best pieces of advice anyone ever gave me was to not compare yourself to anyone else. And that's like a universal thing, right? And you mentioned there that there's always going to be artists that are bigger than you or bigger than anyone else. You know, if anything, there's kind of more reason to dig inside of yourself, right?
Well, and just to take ownership of it and to, I think another good sort of exercise is to like apply it, whatever your field is, to apply it to another field. Like I use this like restaurant analogy all the time, you know, or a bar, whatever, but like, you know, if you have a favorite spot in your town, you're not like, that's really good and it's always packed and they're doing amazing well. You're not there being like, yeah, but it's not, you know, McDonald's. You're like, well, I know it's not McDonald's. There's McDonald's and then there's this. And the idea of like diversity and uniqueness and originality is what makes neighborhoods and makes life cool and fun, is like weirdos and one-offs. And then of course, if there's Taco Bell, there's McDonald's, like it's fine, you know? But the idea that you're somehow lesser than, cause you're not like literally a Coca-Cola, and that's the only thing to be, you know? And the other one that I find really useful is there's always someone with a bigger yaw. Because the other problem is that, you know, when you subscribe to that idea of constant comparison, you're like, you can just find a way to be miserable no matter what you achieve.
Yeah.
So as we speak, there's someone on the fucking Mediterranean, who's cruising past, someone else who's got a basketball court in their yacht, inexplicably. Real thing. But, and being like, God damn it, I'm not that. It's short life. Enjoy it.
Big time. I think there's something I've just started writing a journal again, and I was writing a diary
for you to start again.
So, what made me do it?
Well, just to start again, I'm curious of what was there a particular thing that made you
life's going well. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to write these things down, just like maybe at a time when things aren't going so well, which will happen. I can look back at it and be like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know what I'll think then, but it'll be like, cool, this was happening. Things are happening so quickly, bits and bobs here and there, and just writing down where you're going, who you're seeing, what you're eating, what you're drinking, because I often think about, like the next person, you get bogged down in those years where I felt like shit, and those years that I wasn't really being myself, and I'm like, okay, what was the infrastructure of that? What was I waking up and doing? What was I thinking? Was I doing this too much? Was I doing that not enough? And so I think for me, it's like kind of just whittling it down to the very simple things. Eating, drinking, who you're seeing, what you're thinking about.
It's cool. Yeah. I have a book actually that's one of those where you do that for 5 years. Like it's the same date, and you're supposed to do it every day for 5 years in a row. But of course, my life has been wild and living in various places. So I think it's kind of cooler the way it's ended up with me, because there'll be leaps of years. And then so it'll be like, oh my God, in 97, not that far back, but there's stuff from, I think I got the book in 2000, I don't know, 10 or something like that. So it'll be I'll be like, oh my God, October 15th, 2010, because it'll be the next time I go to it. And it's exactly that of, there's such a small space, and I really don't put feelings. I just put, as you're saying, factual things, and it's stunning. It's sometimes it's just the sort of blasé nonchalance of your amazing day. The one that I stumbled on was that, which I had forgotten also, that these things happened on the same day, is when Lou Reed sang on Wanderlust on our album Synthetica, we recorded at Electric Lady Studios, and I've talked about that a lot, whatever. When I'm like, oh, it's Box with Lou, Dinner with Ryan Maria, Radiohead, John McEnroe. And I'm like, fuck, I forgot that was the same day. Finished the session, went and had dinner with Brian Message. He's a UK music manager friend of ours, at a really great place. Then went to, I don't think it said the venue, see Radiohead, and backstage was John McEnroe, who looked exactly like an older version of Jimmy. And they kept Jimmy was sort of, I think, traumatizing John McEnroe by being the younger version. They were chasing each other around backstage. But to your point, thanks to that book, at that time, it wasn't it wasn't a big deal that day. I was it was cool. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I did. It wasn't my feelings and big floral descriptions. But to see that now, I'm like, dude, your life was popping off. You're living in New York and doing that. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Seeing that during the pandemic, I was just like, wow, it's so distant.
But things are so obvious. What's obvious to us both right now today, we'll look back on and we'll be like, oh damn, isn't that nuts? Isn't that fun?
Totally.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. Cheers, Emily, for getting into it. Cheers for getting into the format. It's all about storytelling. That's what it is. And this new record, the part 2, it's got a lot of nostalgia. It's got a lot of. For that's the way I received it. I mean, tell me if it was written from that place, but it's got a lot of love. It's got a lot of nostalgia. It kind of captures a real kind of cozy feeling.
Yeah, it's interesting how this played out, because the 2 albums. It's the 18 songs were we knew we had a double album when we finished the first one. We just kind of had to sit back and go, how should we release this? We ditched a bunch of stuff. It was these are the gems. how do we do this? And we knew it would be a double album, but we didn't know how to sequence it. Should we do it all at once, or should we tell people there's a second half coming? And so obviously we decided to make it a surprise. But then to your point, I have the same impression, like the nostalgia that's on there, certainly like affected by the circumstances of the pandemic of, there were a lot of things we were missing and realizing we hadn't appreciated or just seemed so far gone. But that sort of like sweetness and, even on Go Ahead and Cry on the last song, it's almost like, I'm referring very explicitly to the moment of it being, seeing Donald Trump on the TV saying all the airports are closed, the March 13th, 2020, moment. And that, you're going along and you're fine. And then you're not, and the sky is falling. But in that sort of where that lyric got to of like, the like Mother Nature's laughing at us. It's, to me, I mean, just talking about it just makes me so sad because it's just like, there's a nostalgia for like the planet, you know, it's just like, we're fucking it up. Yeah. And everybody, I really feel for like young kids that are just like, okay, cool guys. Like I had my goddamn prom, like in the pandemic, like weird dystopian shit. Like, and then it's just like, as we stalled and rushed, we just not doing it right. And so, yes, there's nostalgia for like the literal planet and the animals and the trees and the air.
There's a lot of love in that, isn't it? Because I think when you like think like, fuck, our air is fucked, you realize how much you care. Like, I think for a long time, we're like kind of punk rockers and we're like, whatever, you realize it's a Nick Lowe thing. It's cool to, well, not exactly, but it's cool to care. You want to be, you want to care. Now's the time for care. We got a lot to learn from Gen Z, from Gen Z folks, because they care, Be
engaged.
Be engaged. Be gay. I thought this is what you were about to say. I was like, be gay.
Be gay.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
101.
Hey Emily, thank you so much. This is ace. Cheers again.
So fun. Thank you. Till we meet again.
Can we just end with, I like hearing about people's work mistakes. I feel like it's actually quite powerful to be able to not be perfect all the time, because then I think it opens yourself up to learn more, rather than kind of be kind of busy with putting on a front. And I mean that like in kind of a work environment. Most kind of bar jobs I've worked, I've smashed a heap of glasses. I don't think I worked at a restaurant, but when like a family member did, she would drop everything and kind of like, she got fired for being too slow. And so maybe it comes from my family being like that, but I love hearing stories about people fucking up at work. I'm talking like the fun kind of fucking up, no one getting seriously hurt or anything like that. But I wonder, does anything come to mind for you?
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, I do think, to your point, the anti-fragile concept is so, I think you're right on track with the idea of like trial and error, and just all the good shit is in the mistakes, and it's kind of like akin to the fact that we talk often still in the band that like, one show is worth 20 rehearsals. Like you find out everything by doing things. And just to your point, like having this removed, like I'm not going to make a single move unless I can do it perfectly. You're just limiting your life. And even then it may fuck up. But the thing that comes to mind is like, when we were in LA and it was before we, so it would have been 2001 and a half or two, something. We're just so broke. We're all living in like a 1-bedroom sublet. And it was the era of as we like to call it, like expired power bars from the 99-cent store. You're like, how bad could it be? 9-cent wings, like that kind of scrimping. And it was hitting my big manifesto that I share with you from like my Toronto epiphany of like, I'm going to quit my job and just like, I'd rather have nothing. And it was reaching the end of the road. This is before it's like, you literally have no money. And even though we're all pitching in to like cover a $200, you don't have like $10. So I got it in my head that I could work at a vintage store. If I could do something on the side, I was like, I don't want to wait tables. I don't want to fall into that trap. So it was the most elaborate interview process that went on in my memory. It was like several interviews. And I picture, hearkening back to Beacon's Closet in Williamsburg where Sam worked and like Molly worked. I was like, vintage is cool. Consignment, it's cool.
Bit loose.
Cool t-shirt. I don't know. Yeah, like I like fashion. I'll find, I picture that I'm going to be what they call a picker, which is not the most beautiful term, but, so that people come in with the bags of stuff and I'll be like, we'll take that or we'll take this. So I have all these interviews and I'm like, yeah, I'm experienced. I don't know. I know brands, I know cool shit, high-end shit, whatever. So I got hired. And I was like, it's going to be fine. It's walking distance, which is not a thing in Los Angeles. I'm living in Hollywood, and it was like a walk to Melrose. And on the first day, I'm like, great, I'm here. Like, where's the counter? What do I do? And they sent me upstairs to a very small unventilated room that had, it was like a minor panic attack just talking about it. Again, more hangers than I've ever seen in my life, more than I knew existed on Earth. Like plastic hangers, but not all the same kind, just like a hellish melee of like, is that the word?
Yeah,
M-E-L-L.
I like it.
M-E-L-E-E, mixture of like wire hangers, plastic hangers, everybody's crappy ass hangers. And my job was to organize those hangers.
No.
And I lasted about 15 minutes. And then it came to the lunch break. And when I went on my lunch break, I just never came back. So.
That's kind of, that is like it's like a ball of string. It's like unpack that and make that all. That's fucked. That is terrifying.
Yeah, and again, it was like, I was like, I'll hustle harder. I don't know, but this is gonna be the end of me.
Well, it's good. They
didn't love me for that.
Yeah, could you go back? I guess you couldn't.
There's no going back to that one.
No going back to shopping. Put on a
shopping
wig.
there was like,
yeah. Well, good on you for leaving, because I think like the worst thing you could have done definitely didn't feel like this at the time, I imagine. But you're like, fuck it. No, I got better things to be done. I got better things to do. And I don't think that's rude saying that. I think that's just for you,
Yeah, I was just like this, I can't.
Good to know. Good to know you stop. Hey, thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much.
So there she was on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Emily Haines of Metric. Formentera 2 is out now. Great record. Cheers for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. Please subscribe if you dug this show. Please rate or review if you want to go that far. I appreciate that massively, and it helps me keep on getting brilliant, fun, interesting guests who are willing to give away their stories. Thank you so much for joining, and see you soon. Back next week with more episodes.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.